Dark hillside, clouds pressing low, the city of Rio glowing faintly in the distance. A boy, no more than 12, running with a kite in his hand. But then he stops. The kite falls. His eyes widen. There, in the grass of Vintim Hill, two figures lie still. Not sleeping, not resting. Motionless, like dolls discarded in a cruel game. Their bodies dressed in neat suits and raincoats. Their faces hidden behind strange metallic masks, masks made of lead, covering only their eyes. Police arrive. The air is heavy, humid, the ground soft underfoot. Two technicians, they learn, Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana. Both young men in their 30s, both from Campos, over 100 miles away. What were they doing here? Why dressed so formally? And why those masks? Around them, the police gather evidence. A notebook, 2 towels, an empty water bottle, but no weapons, no marks of violence, no signs of struggle. Their bodies are intact, calm, almost staged. The notebook is opened. Inside, in hurried handwriting, be a determined place. Take capsules. Wait for signal. Protect metals. The police look at one another, unsettled. Capsules? What capsules? None are found. The men's pockets are empty. Their mouths sealed. The coroner arrives late. The bodies, exposed in the open air of Rio, begin to decompose. By the time autopsy begins, it is too late to test for poison or drugs. The cause of death is never determined. Officially, inconclusive, but unofficially, something is wrong. The lead masks, the strange note, the ritualistic calm of the scene. Narration, voice deep, commanding. This was not the chaos of murder, nor the silence of natural death. This was something else. A meeting, an appointment. These men had gone to greet something, or someone. They dressed for the occasion, obeyed the instructions, and waited for the signal. But whatever signal came, it ended in silence. 2 men dead. A mystery born. Who were these men, lying side by side on a lonely hill with lead shielding their eyes? Not wanderers, not criminals, not nameless victims. They were technicians, men of science. Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana. Both worked with electronics in the city of Campos dos Goitacazes, more than 200 kilometers from Rio. Known as quiet, disciplined, deeply intelligent. They were fascinated by the hidden world of signals, not just radio signals, but signals from beyond. They belonged to a group of spiritualist experimenters, not cultists in the crude sense, but seekers, men who believed that the invisible world could be reached through technology, through vibrations, through energy. In the 60s, Brazil was fertile soil for such obsessions. Radios filled the night with static and whispers, and in that static, they believed other voices lived. Voices of entities not human. Their families said they were restless in the days before their deaths. Nervous but determined. They told their wives they were going to buy equipment for experiments. They packed raincoats, suits, small amounts of cash. Then they left. On August 17th, they were seen boarding a bus to Niterói. To friends, they gave no details. To family, no explanations. Just a quiet promise they would return. But they never did. Witnesses later claimed the men seemed secretive, tense, as if holding knowledge too heavy to share. They were not traveling for pleasure. They were on a mission. And the question burns, what mission requires 2 young men to dress formally, carry lead masks, and write down instructions to take capsules and wait for a signal? This was not science as their colleagues knew it. It was ritual, precision wrapped in secrecy. Narration, voice low, pulling the listener deeper. Science seeks truth through reason. But these men were not reasoning. They were obeying instructions that may not have come from any human source. They believed in a power beyond their own. And to meet that power, they abandoned reason, family, and life itself. Who gave them the orders? Who whispered the plan? That is the shadow in which this story still lives. When investigators searched the grass around the bodies, they found very little. 2 towels, a bottle of water, a packet from a local bar where the men had purchased it, and then the notebook. Inside, A single page carried words that still haunt every researcher who has seen them. Be a determined place. Take capsules. Wait for signal. Protect metals. No explanation. No context. Just instructions, cold, simple, final. The authorities tried to decode it. Be a determined place, the hill. Take capsules, but what capsules? No poison was ever found because the autopsy came too late. Their bodies had decomposed in the August heat, leaving no trace of toxins. Wait for signal. Signal from whom? A radio transmission? A light in the sky? Or a voice beyond human? And then, the most mysterious of all, protect metals. What metals? Why were metals so important that they had to be shielded, preserved, guarded in death? But even stranger than the note were the masks. Both men had carefully crafted lead-eye coverings, the kind used in experiments with radiation. Thick, heavy, cut to fit across the face, held in place like shields against a blinding force. Experts offered theories. Perhaps they expected to encounter radiation. Perhaps they believed a dazzling flash of light would blind them. But from where? From a man-made device? Or from something else entirely? These masks were not ordinary props. They were purposeful, deliberate, handmade with patience and certainty. They speak of preparation, not panic. A ritual, not an accident. Imagine them on that hill, lying back, masks over their eyes, their bodies calm, hands folded as if waiting for something to appear above them. Waiting for the signal. Narration slows, voice deep, almost whispering. You do not create a mask of lead unless you believe the danger is real. They believed in the danger. They believed in the signal. And they believed that on that hill, on that night, someone or something was coming for them. That belief cost them everything. In the nights surrounding the discovery, locals whispered of strange lights. Orange glows moving unnaturally across the Rio sky, discs hovering in silence above the hills of Niterói. These were not random rumors. Multiple witnesses described the same phenomena on the same night the men died. Some claimed they saw a luminous craft, pulsing like a heart, suspended above the hill where the bodies were later found. Others spoke of a blinding flash that lit the trees as if daylight had briefly torn the sky open. Now, consider this. Manuel and Miguel were not only technicians, they were seekers. They belonged to a spiritualist group fascinated by extraterrestrials, obsessed with the possibility of contact. They spoke of experiments to tune into higher intelligences using frequencies, transmissions, and altered states of mind. And what does the note say? Take capsules. Wait for signal. Capsules could mean a chemical gateway, something to lower the body, weaken the mind, make it receptive to what was coming. A trance, a ritual, a sacrifice. Wait for signal, a phrase eerily familiar to anyone who studies contact rituals. This signal is the call, the acknowledgement, the proof that something on the other side has heard you. The locals who saw the lights, did they witness the signal? Was the hill chosen because it was a landing site or a meeting point long agreed upon? And then, the masks. If the stories of blinding light were true, they had come prepared. Not for a human encounter, not for a hidden government experiment, but for something radiant, powerful, inhuman. Something that could not be looked upon with naked eyes. But here is the most chilling thought. What if the signal did come? What if they were not waiting in vain? What if, in those final moments, they saw exactly what they had been searching for, and it destroyed them? Narration drops low, slow, commanding. The witnesses saw the lights. The men prepared the masks. The note gave the ritual. Everything points to contact. But contact with what? Something from beyond the stars, or something that wears the mask of the stars, only to feed on those who seek it. When investigators first reached the hillside, they documented the scene, but not in full. Critical evidence was ignored, delayed, or outright dismissed. The bodies were left long enough for decomposition to erase vital traces. Toxicology never performed. Autopsy notes incomplete. Cause of death officially unknown. On the surface, it looks like incompetence. But pause. In Brazil during the 1960s, incompetence was rarely just incompetence. The country was gripped in Cold War tension, a front line where both the United States and the Soviet Union tested influence, technologies, and covert operations. Now, imagine two electronics technicians, men obsessed with frequencies, radio transmissions, higher contact. Men dabbling in circuits and spiritualism, combining science with ritual. What would they have stumbled upon? And more importantly, who was watching? Here is what few dare to consider. Governments were already experimenting with psychotronics, the weaponization of mind and energy. Research programs in Brazil mirrored shadow projects in the United States, like in Cultura. Experiments with hallucinogens, electromagnetic fields, and psychic manipulation. Could Manuel and Miguel have been part of something bigger, knowingly or unknowingly? Could their so-called ritual have been a test, a failed initiation into an experiment designed to push the limits of human perception? And when it went wrong, when the result was two dead men on a hill wearing lead masks, the response was not curiosity, but silence. Evidence sealed, files forgotten, families left in confusion. Ask yourself this: why no toxicology? Why no radiation testing? Why was the note never fully examined for code or cipher? Why was the most bizarre mystery in Brazil's modern history brushed aside so quickly? The answer is not incompetence. It is containment. The masks, the capsules, the ritual, they were not just props of two dreamers chasing aliens. They were fragments of knowledge forbidden to reach the public. Narration grows darker, sharper. Every silence is a strategy. Every omission is a shield. When the state refuses to investigate, it is not because it knows nothing. It is because it knows too much. Decades have passed since those two bodies were carried down from the hill. Yet the silence around their deaths never lifted. It only grew heavier. Ask anyone in Niterói today, and you'll find whispers, warnings, uneasy glances when the masks are mentioned. Some call it superstition. Others call it curse. But behind the nervous smiles, there's something else: fear. A fear that what happened to Manuel and Miguel wasn't an isolated tragedy, but a fragment of a larger pattern, one that continues to this day. You see, the lead mask's mystery didn't die in 1966. Across Brazil, reports of strange lights, mutilated cattle, and encounters with entities grew in number. And always, woven into those stories, is the theme of contact. Not just contact with extraterrestrials, but contact with something more dangerous. Forces that blur the line between science and the occult. The lead masks, preserved in evidence, now feel less like forensic exhibits and more like relics. Artifacts of a ritual gone wrong, locked away in police archives where no one dares to look. The notebook with its cryptic instructions remains unsolved, as if mocking the investigators, who pretended not to see. And what of the families? They never found answers. For them, grief became a cage. Their loved ones reduced to symbols in a story too dark to speak aloud. Parents buried their sons without explanation. Wives carried silence like a scar. Children grew up haunted by questions no one could answer. But the true legacy is not personal grief, it is collective fear. Fear that two ordinary men discovered something forbidden. Fear that the signal they were waiting for did arrive, but its consequences were unspeakable. Fear that governments, institutions, and unseen powers close the curtain not to protect us, but to keep us ignorant. And so the masks remain, heavy with lead, heavier with meaning. They do not just cover eyes. They represent blindness, the blindness imposed on us all. Narration sharpens, almost whispering. Two men went seeking light. Instead, they became shadows. Their story warns us of something we were never meant to know. And the silence that followed is the loudest truth of all. History pretends that mysteries like the lead masks begin and end with single, isolated tragedies. But that is a lie. These patterns have existed for thousands of years, recycled across civilizations, always hidden behind ritual, secrecy, and death. The Egyptians had their initiations into the mysteries of Osiris, where men were told to face blinding light in the darkness of the tomb, a test that killed the unprepared. The Mayans spoke of sacred vision rituals using intoxicating plants, where priests would pierce themselves and bleed, waiting for signals from gods cloaked in fire. The Greeks forced initiates of Eleusis into secret ceremonies, warning them that to speak a single word of what they saw meant instant death. And across these cultures, one theme repeats: the mask. In Egypt, golden funerary masks covered the dead, meant to shield the soul's passage. In tribal shamanism, carved masks protected the living from spirits too powerful to look upon directly. In medieval Europe, the iron mask became a prison of identity, a way to erase a man from history while keeping him alive. So when you look at Manuel and Miguel lying on that hill with lead masks covering their eyes, you must ask, were they truly the first? Or were they walking the same path men have walked for thousands of years? A path that demands the covering of sight before revelation? And the notebook, with its commands to take capsules and wait for the signal. It is nothing more than the modern script of an ancient play. Replace capsules with sacred plants, signal with visions, and protect metals with protect the soul's essence. And you realize this was ritual. Ritual updated for the 20th century. But here lies the most chilling truth. Rituals of old were never for the masses. They were for the chosen few. The elites, the priesthoods, the ones who dictated what gods demanded and what men must obey. These masks are not science experiments gone wrong. They are remnants of a control system older than history itself. Narration lowers, steady and commanding. The faces change, the symbols shift, but the pattern remains. From the pyramids to the hills of Brazil, the same hand writes the same ritual. And every time a man obeys, the system grows stronger. Do you see it yet? The world tells you that you are free, that your choices are your own, that your beliefs rise from within. But look closer and you'll see the strings. The lead mass mystery was not just about two men dying in silence. It was about two men who believed so deeply in something unseen, they surrendered their lives willingly. That is not death, that is control. Psychological control has always been the true weapon of power. Armies fade, empires collapse, but belief endures. It is belief that makes a man take a capsule without question. Belief that makes him cover his eyes against a light he cannot prove exists. Belief that makes him wait on a lonely hillside for a signal that never comes. You think this is strange, isolated, but it is the same system you live under today. Governments, corporations, media, religions, they do not need chains. They need narratives. They craft the stories that enter your head and program your actions. They decide what danger looks like, what success looks like, what your life is worth. And you obey without resistance, just as Manuel and Miguel obeyed the instructions in that notebook. Look at advertising, endless signals telling you what to buy, how to dress, who to be. Look at politics. Speeches crafted like rituals, repeated chants, slogans designed to bypass reason and hit the core of your psyche. Look at media, fear broadcast daily, keeping you in a permanent state of waiting for the next attack, the next disease, the next collapse, waiting for the signal. And here is the terrifying truth. You do not need a lead mask on your eyes. You already wear one, a mask of perception forced on you since childhood. It blocks what you're not allowed to see. It filters your reality. And the metals it protects are not in your pocket. They are in your mind. Your attention, your energy, your life force. Narration drops lower, sharper. They didn't just find two bodies in Brazil. They found a mirror of your own condition. Men waiting for instructions, blindfolded by design, controlled by forces they never understood. The question is not what killed them. The question is, what is killing you? When the bodies of Manuel and Miguel were found, the world should have demanded answers. Two men, educated technicians, dead under circumstances so bizarre they defied reason. A notebook with cryptic commands. Masks that shielded their eyes from some unseen force. Capsules never recovered, never analyzed. And yet silence. The police closed the case as inconclusive. Toxicology tests were delayed until the bodies decomposed beyond examination. Evidence was dismissed. Leads were ignored. Why? Was it incompetence or intention? This is the pattern of power. Whenever a truth threatens to break the illusion, it is buried. Think of Roswell, 1947. Witnesses swore they saw a wreckage not of this earth, yet the story was drowned in official denials. Think of MKUltra. For decades, the government claimed it never existed, until documents surfaced proving the manipulation of minds was not theory, but practice. Think of every time a whistleblower vanishes, every time classified files remain locked for 50 years for national security. Whose security? Certainly not yours. The masks in Brazil were not just objects. They were symbols. Proof that men had reached into the forbidden, touched something beyond human understanding. But such proof cannot be allowed. If the masses knew the truth about energy, about consciousness, about contact, entire systems of control would collapse. Religions would lose authority. Governments would lose obedience. The elite would lose power. So the file is closed. The families are told to move on. The world is told it was simply strange. And in that silence, the lesson is clear. You are not meant to know. But here is what they fear most. Once you see the pattern, you can never unsee it. Every mystery left unsolved is not a failure of investigation. It is a success of suppression. The unanswered question is itself a form of control. And the more you accept it, the deeper the mask presses against your eyes. Narration sharpens. Remember this. What they do not explain, they control. What they bury, they weaponize. And every silence you accept is another chain around your mind. The truth was never lost, it was locked away. Long before the lead masks, long before capsules and cryptic notes, the same machinery of silence was already in motion. Institutions, whether cloaked in the robes of religion or the emblems of empire, have always known one secret truth. Control begins with what you forbid people from seeing. Look to the ancient world. Temples guarded knowledge as jealously as kings guarded gold. In Mesopotamia, priesthoods dictated who could access the stars, who could read omens in the skies. In Egypt, the pharaoh was the living bridge between mortals and the divine, but only because the masses were denied access to hidden rituals and sacred texts. In Rome, the Senate declared which gods were sanctioned and which cults would be crushed. Always the same formula. Knowledge hidden, power concentrated, obedience extracted. The irony is bitter. The same institutions that preach salvation, purity, or order were often built on corruption, secrecy, and violence. They created myths to keep men docile, rules to keep men loyal, and punishments to destroy those who questioned. And when fragments of forbidden knowledge slipped through, when someone glimpsed too much of the machinery behind the curtain, they were branded heretic, traitor, insane. Does it sound familiar? It should. Because centuries later, on a lonely Brazilian hillside, two technicians lay down to await a signal. Perhaps they thought they were breaking into a higher plane. Perhaps they believed they had escaped the old lies. But the system of silence that has existed for millennia still ruled their fate. The masks were not only to shield their eyes. They were symbols of how men have always been blinded. Not by light, but by authority. By faith in systems designed to conceal, never to reveal. Narration deepens, voice heavier, commanding. You were born into a structure of deception older than empires, older than nations. The corruption you see today is only the echo of what has always been. The elites did not invent lies. They inherited them, and they passed them down to ensure men remain bound generation after generation. The question is no longer what Manuel and Miguel saw on that hill. The question is, what are you still blind to? The most effective chains are not made of iron, but of thought. By the 20th century, the elites no longer needed whips, prisons, or altars to keep men in line. They discovered something far more powerful. The human mind itself could be colonized, conditioned, and controlled. And once that door was opened, no one was safe. Think of propaganda. Entire nations convinced to march into wars that served only the few. Think of advertising. Desires manufactured in men who never asked for them. Think of education systems. Knowledge filtered, history rewritten, questions silenced before they could ever form. From the classroom to the television, from a newspaper headline to the glowing screen in your pocket, the battlefield shifted from streets and cities into the brain itself. In Brazil of the 1960s, this was no different. The Cold War was not fought only with bombs. It was fought with signals, with psychology, with experiments on how to bend perception. Intelligence agencies across the globe were studying hypnosis, psychedelics, electromagnetic frequencies. They weren't just asking how to kill a man, they were asking how to own his thoughts. And here lay the strange note. Take capsules. Wait for signal. Was this ritual or programming? Did Manuel and Miguel act from faith? Or were they responding like subjects to an experiment? Imagine men who believed they were ascending, when in truth they were merely pawns in a test of control. Narration drops into a darker register. Psychological control is the perfect tyranny because the prisoner does not know he is in chains. He believes his choices are his own. He believes his death is his destiny. But in truth, every step was scripted, every thought was written for him. This is why their story matters. Two technicians on a hill in Brazil may seem small in the sweep of history, but what happened to them is happening to you now in silence. They awaited a signal, and you receive signals every hour of every day. On screens, through words, through symbols designed to bypass your reason and bury themselves deep in your subconscious. The masks hid their eyes, but what shields yours? Whenever history offers a mystery, you must look not only at what is revealed, but what is missing. The lead mask case was full of gaps so deliberate they feel less like accidents and more like erasures. No toxicology performed on the bodies. No serious investigation into the capsules. No preservation of the men's equipment or tools. Reports that vanish into bureaucratic silence. Witnesses whose testimonies were brushed aside. This is how truth is buried, not in dramatic fires or public trials, but in quiet neglect. In forms never filed. In reports marked inconclusive. In conversations that never make it to print. The public forgets, but the keepers of silence never do. Ask yourself, why would police allow such obvious evidence to rot away? Why would a coroner delay his work until decomposition made testing impossible? Why did every official choose the path that guaranteed mystery rather than clarity? It is because suppressed truths are often more dangerous than crimes themselves. The truth of what Manuel and Miguel sought, whether it was contact with forces beyond this world or the misuse of secret technologies, was not meant for ordinary eyes. If the men died in error, exposing that error could unravel larger experiments, larger agendas. Better to call a mystery and let the hillside grow quiet again. But silence is not the same as absence. Suppressed truths leave scars. Families asking questions that never find answers. Researchers blocked at every turn. Stories whispered in bars, passed like contraband. And in those whispers, something survives. Narration deepens, heavy, deliberate. Suppression is not destruction. When evidence disappears, it only confirms that there was something worth hiding. When answers are denied, it means the question cut too deep. Every missing piece is not emptiness. It is proof of a hidden hand, guiding what you are allowed to know. The masks remain in an evidence room, but the truth is locked in a vault far higher. Men like Manuel and Miguel touch it briefly, and then vanish. The rest of us are given fragments, just enough to doubt, but never enough to see clearly. This is how forbidden history survives. Half seen, half erased, dangerous because it refuses to die. Power has always feared exposure. What happened on that hillside in 1966 was not new. It was a modern reflection of something older, something woven into the very fabric of civilization. Since the first empires rose from desert sands, rulers understood one truth. Control begins not with armies, but with knowledge. Keep the masses blind, and you can lead them anywhere. Show them too much light, and their obedience dissolves. In ancient temples, only the high priests were allowed to gaze upon the sacred objects, the hidden writings, the forbidden symbols. Ordinary people could worship, but never see. In Rome, knowledge of engineering, astronomy, and medicine was hoarded by elites while gladiators distracted the mob. In medieval Europe, Bibles were chained to altars, written in languages the peasants could not read. Always the same pattern: revelation for the few, darkness for the many. What happened to Manuel and Miguel mirrors this. They reached for knowledge beyond their station. They experimented, studied transmissions, delved into the unseen. They tried to touch the sacred signal without the protection of sanctioned institutions. And in doing so, they broke an unwritten law. This is why their story feels less like an accident and more like an echo of a ritual punishment. In ancient times, initiates who strayed into forbidden mysteries were exiled, silenced, or executed in secret ceremonies. Today, the rituals look different. Files go missing, evidence vanishes, investigations stall. But the purpose is identical: to remind the world that certain truths are not for everyone. The men in the masks were not just casualties of an experiment. They were warnings. Warnings to anyone who might attempt to bypass the gates of knowledge. Warnings that the corridors of power still guard their secrets with cold efficiency. Narration drops into a commanding whisper. Ancient corruption never died. It only changed costumes. What priests once hid behind stone altars, governments now bury in classified archives. What emperors once guarded in temples, corporations now lock inside patents and black budgets. And always, the ones who reach too far are left behind as silent monuments to forbidden knowledge. Look at the hillside again, not as a crime scene, but as a temple floor, two bodies laid in ritual order, masked against visions too bright, silenced before they could speak. The corruption is ancient. The echoes are modern. From the outside, governments, corporations, and secret societies look like separate machines, but in truth, they are pieces of one architecture. Different faces on the same mask. Their goal has always been the same: not to serve, not to protect, but to shape. To shape perception, behavior, and belief itself. Think about it. Institutions are not built to free you. They are built to contain you. Schools do not teach you how to think. They teach you what to think. Governments do not protect your freedom. They measure how much of it you are allowed to use. Corporations do not sell products. They sell lifestyles that reprogram your desires until you cannot separate yourself from what they feed you. Every institution is an engineer of the mind, and behind their polished doors sit the architects, the ones who understand that true control does not come from chains, but from invisible walls. Why was the lead mask's case buried in silence? Because institutions could not allow two technicians, two ordinary men, to reveal that forbidden corridors exist outside their walls. The note, the masks, the capsules, it was not just strange. It was dangerous. If people knew they could reach for higher forces without permission, the entire architecture of control would crack. This is why suppression is always surgical. Truths that could set men free are dismissed as conspiracy theories. Events that do not fit the narrative are stamped as accidents, inconclusive, unexplained. The architects know that the masses crave certainty, so they give them silence instead. But every silence is a design choice. Every missing toxicology report, every vanished file, every official shrug is not incompetence. It is architecture. It is control by omission. The hillside in Niteroi was not just a grave, it was a classroom. The lesson was simple: step outside the sanctioned paths, and you will be erased. And yet, for those who see, that very erasure is proof. Proof that something waits beyond the veil. Proof that the architects of control are not as invincible as they seem. Because if they must hide it, then it must be powerful. Narration deepens, cutting through the listener's chest. Do you see it now? The architects have built your prison so well, you mistake it for safety. But the cracks are there, and every mystery they bury, every silence they enforce, is an invitation to look closer, to see the hands that built the walls around you. Every age of history has carried its own signal, an intrusion of truth that breaks through the noise, an eruption of knowledge that cannot be explained by ordinary systems. The prophets of the past, the inventors who saw beyond their century, the mystics who touched forces no priest could describe. Each of them caught the signal, and each of them, in time, was silenced. The men on that hill in Nitoroi waited for a signal. Their note said it clearly: be at determined place. Take capsules. Wait for signal. But what was the signal? Was it a frequency hidden in the fabric of reality? A coded transmission from beyond the stars? Or was it the same eternal call that has haunted mankind for millennia? The invitation to step beyond the prison of the ordinary? Notice how institutions respond to every signal. When Nikola Tesla claimed he heard transmissions not of this earth, they buried his work under ridicule and locked away his notes. When shamans across the ancient world described visions of blinding light and beings not of flesh, organized religion stamped them as heresy. When ordinary men like Manuel and Miguel tried to tune their radios to the heavens, they were found dead, their eyes shielded by lead, their voices silenced forever. This is the pattern. The signal appears. Someone dares to listen, and silence follows. Not just the silence of death, but the silence of erasure. Files missing, investigations closed, questions unanswered. Why silence? Because if the signal were allowed to spread, the architecture of control would fracture. Men would no longer kneel to systems. They would rise to forces greater than the system itself. And those who rule cannot allow that. But here is the paradox. Silence is also a signal. Every unexplained disappearance, every covered-up experiment, every case like the lead masks, is proof in itself that there is something worth hiding. Something dangerous, yes, but dangerous only to those who benefit from your blindness. The camera lingers on the masks, glowing faintly in shadow. The men on that hill were waiting. Maybe they heard it, maybe they saw it. Maybe their mistake was not in believing, but in trusting that they could walk through the door alone. And when they failed, the silence was sealed around them. But in that silence, the signal still echoes. Can you hear it? Fear has always been the purest metal in the forge of control. Kings, priests, generals, governments, they all learned that men do not need chains on their wrists if their minds already were shackles made of terror. And so fear became the great alchemy, the transformation of free men into obedient servants. Look closely at history. The burning of heretics, the endless wars fought in God's name, the propaganda posters that told you who to love and who to hate, all of it was the same ritual. Fear crafted into a weapon. Fear distilled into obedience. The signal that awakens is always drowned beneath the roar of engineered terror. And do you see how it still works? The modern world does not burn heretics, it isolates them. The man who questions the official story is branded a conspiracy theorist. The one who refuses the narrative is called dangerous, unstable, insane. Fear of humiliation, fear of exile, fear of losing your livelihood. These are the new flames licking at your skin. And like those two men with lead masks, society warns you. Don't look at the light, don't swallow the capsule, don't wait for the signal. But here is the secret. The elites are not afraid of your failure. They are afraid of your success. They are afraid that you will not collapse when you look into the forbidden, that you will not go mad when you pierce through their illusions. They fear that you will discover your own power, unbending and absolute, and refuse to kneel. That is why every path is seeded with terror. Fear is the ultimate test. It is the invisible toll gate at the entrance to knowledge. You either pay with obedience or you walk through it unflinching. And when you walk through it, the chains fall, the noise breaks, the signal sharpens. So ask yourself, whose alchemy is shaping you? Are you the raw material, melted down by every broadcast of panic, every whisper of catastrophe, every trembling headline? Or are you the fire, the one who turns fear back on itself, using it as fuel, as proof that the path you walk is real? Fear was the metal that forged their silence, but it can be the fire that forges your freedom. The alchemy of fear only controls those who never dare to master it. Power has always wrapped itself in ritual. Not the rituals you see in temples or churches, but the hidden ones performed behind doors sealed with silence. within chambers where only the chosen stand. These are not prayers to gods above. They are invocations to forces that rule below the surface of history. Look at kings crowned beneath cathedrals, presidents swearing oaths on ancient texts, judges raising gavels as if they hold divine judgment. All ritual, all theater, every gesture, every symbol, every word chosen not for beauty, but for control. The man watching sees only ceremony. The man awakened sees the signal beneath it. Symbols are the true language of power. Why do you think the same emblems, pyramids, all-seeing eyes, double-headed eagles, torches, repeat across continents, across centuries, across regimes that claim to hate one another? Because power speaks in a code older than nations. These symbols are not decoration. They are keys to forces that demand recognition before they grant authority. And the rituals go deeper than crowns and oaths. In private halls, men of wealth and influence enact ceremonies you were never meant to see. Strange masks, hidden chants, sacred geometries drawn in secret. They do not believe these acts are superstition. They believe these acts work. They believe they bind reality to their will, that they align the machinery of existence itself to serve their command. The ordinary man scoffs, thinking ritual is myth, but the powerful do not scoff. They invest in it. They guard it. They kill to protect it. Why? Because ritual binds the group tighter than money ever could. It creates a fraternity of secrecy, an unspoken pact. You have seen what I have seen. You have sworn as I have sworn. You are mine, and I am yours forever. That is why politicians shake hands in ways you cannot decode. That is why monuments align with stars, why ceremonies happen on exact dates, why deaths of leaders often coincide with ancient festivals. These are not coincidences. They are signals, rituals layered over reality, invisible to those who never learn the language. And the dead men in the masks, did they stumble into one such ritual? Were they imitators of the elite, playing with symbols too dangerous for amateurs? Or were they sacrifices, pawns placed in a ritual not of their own making, their deaths feeding an altar invisible to the public eye? Power does not parade itself in daylight. It dances in ritual, cloaked in secrecy, and only those who dare to read its symbols glimpse the machine. The greatest prison is not built of stone and steel. It is built of perception, a prison of the mind. And in that prison, the jailers are not soldiers with rifles. They are broadcasters, editors, teachers, and priests who craft the reality you consume. What you call news is not information, it is programming. Headlines chosen not to inform you, but to direct your attention. Words carefully selected to stir emotions. Images cut to bypass your reason and pierce directly into your nervous system. And once the illusion is woven, millions march in sync, convinced they are thinking freely, when in truth they are only repeating what was whispered into their skulls. Every empire that has ruled understood this machinery. Rome had its bread and circuses. Medieval kings had their sermons and trials. Today, screens glow in every hand, every pocket, every room. The circus now fits in your palm. They do not need to silence you. They only need to flood you until truth drowns beneath noise. The illusion is layered. At the surface, entertainment, sports, drama, endless distraction. Beneath that, the selective outrage. Wars covered one way, revolts covered another. Deeper still, the framing of your very language. Notice how certain words are forbidden, certain thoughts branded dangerous, certain questions mocked before they are answered. That is not culture evolving, that is engineering. You are told who the heroes are, who the villains are, when to cheer, when to rage, when to fear. And when two sides are offered, left or right, red or blue, it is only to disguise the fact that both wings belong to the same bird. The illusion is not to convince you that one side is true. The illusion is to keep you fighting over shadows while the real architects remain unseen. Think carefully. Why do scandals vanish overnight while trivial gossip lingers for years? Why do wars begin on the very day a financial system collapses? Why do leaders speak of freedom while every new law binds tighter around your throat? The answer is simple: illusion. You are not shown the world as it is. You are shown the world as they require you to see it. And when men like the ones in the mask stray beyond that illusion, trying to pierce the veil to contact truths outside the authorized channels, they are consumed. Because illusions are fragile, and those who shatter them are not forgiven. Illusion is the weapon. Perception is the battlefield. And the war for your mind has already begun. Behind the machinery, behind the curtains of media, politics, and religion, there are hands you do not see. They are not the leaders who smile on television, nor the celebrities who distract you with scandal. Those are pawns, masks, shadows on the wall. The real power hides deeper. Generations of families, networks of financiers, secretive councils whose names never appear in your history books. These are the architects of control. They do not chase fame. Fame is a leash. They seek something greater, continuity. While presidents come and go, while kings rise and fall, these lineages remain. Their wealth does not rest in numbers on a screen, but in ownership of land, of resources, of information itself. They own the debt that nations bleed to repay. They own the patents that dictate which medicines exist and which cures never see light. They own the publishing houses that decide which knowledge survives and which is buried. Centuries ago, they learned that the greatest weapon is not the sword, but the narrative. They fund both sides of wars, ensuring victory no matter the flag. They whisper into the ears of monarchs, then later into the microphones of presidents. They build temples, then banks, then corporations, but the bloodline remains the same. Kingship without crown, dominion without recognition. You're told that history is shaped by revolutions, by uprisings of the people. But trace the rivers of gold beneath each so-called uprising, and you will find the same architects funding the flames. When chaos erupts, they buy. When economies collapse, they harvest. When systems burn, they rise with stronger chains. Ask yourself, how can a man work his entire life and own nothing, while dynasties born centuries ago still feast on the labor of the living? How can democracies shout of liberty, while every choice offered still funnels wealth upward? Because freedom is permitted only within the boundaries they design. They shape not only the economy, but the imagination of entire civilizations. And here lies the truth that chills. These architects of control do not merely seek money. Money is only the tool. Their true hunger is order. Not the natural order of chaos and creation, but engineered order. The kind where every life, every thought, every breath is measured, predicted, and steered. A world without accident. A world where nothing is free. The lead masks, the capsules, the cryptic notes. Such events whisper of men brushing against this hidden architecture. Men who dared to experiment outside the approved narrative. And when they reached too far, the architects erased them, as they always do. Control is not seized once. It is maintained forever, and those who maintain it never reveal their names. Symbols are not decoration, they are weapons. The architects of control do not rule only with banks and armies, but with rituals older than empires. They understand something the masses have forgotten. The human mind does not bend to logic alone. It bends to symbol, to ceremony, to fear wrapped in mystery. Look carefully at the monuments of power, the obelisks rising in capital cities, the all-seeing eye staring from your currency, the endless repetition of certain numbers, 3s, 7s, 11s, in the dates of wars and accidents. These are not coincidences. They are alignments, rituals etched into the fabric of your reality. Every great catastrophe is both event and sacrifice, feeding a system of energy most cannot see. The coronation of kings, the oath of presidents, the chanting in parliaments. These are political only on the surface. Beneath, they are incantations, carefully scripted ceremonies designed not to honor the people, but to consecrate the rulers in the eyes of forces older than civilization itself. The masks, the robes, the lights. all ancient theater repeated in modern dress. And ask yourself this: why were Manuel and Miguel, the two technicians of the lead masked mystery, instructed to wear masks? Why the command to wait for the signal? Was it science or was it ritual? When they swallowed those capsules, were they ingesting chemicals or sacraments? Did they believe they were making contact with aliens? Or were they stepping into the same ritualistic current that the hidden elite have always used to bind power? Powerful groups understand that ritual is not mere superstition. It is programming. Repetition engraves reality. A symbol charged with emotion becomes a trigger, shaping thought without the victim even noticing. Every flag waved, every anthem sung, every televised disaster replayed until numbness sets in. It is ritual on a global scale, and you participate in it, unaware. Here is the terrifying truth. The architects do not need to chain you physically. They only need to make you perform their rituals, to rise for their songs, to celebrate their holidays, to mourn their tragedies. Every time you repeat, you reinforce the order they desire. The lead masks may have been nothing more than a ritual that failed, or perhaps a ritual that succeeded, but in ways the men never understood. Either way, the masks remind us of this truth. Rituals of power are not rare. They are constant. They surround you daily. And once you learn to see them, you will never see the world the same again. The greatest prison is the ritual you do not recognize, the mask you wear without knowing. Once, control was maintained with whips and chains. Today, it is maintained with data. You are watched not by guards and towers, but by invisible eyes in your devices, in your streets, in your very thoughts. The cage has no walls, yet it surrounds you more tightly than iron ever could. Every call you make, every word you type, every purchase you log, recorded, analyzed, stored. You tell yourself it is harmless, that it is for convenience, for safety, for progress. But progress is simply the mask of power. What they have built is the greatest surveillance machine in human history. And here is the truth they will not admit. The machine is not neutral. It is designed to study you the way a farmer studies his livestock. Think about it. Algorithms track not only what you do, but who you are becoming. They measure your desires before you even feel them. They predict your choices before you know you will make them. And if prediction is possible, so is influence. If they can anticipate your future, they can shape it. Remember the instructions found beside the dead men in Brazil. Take capsules. Wait for signal. That was surveillance in its most primitive form. They were being monitored, guided by unseen forces, their actions controlled step by step. The note was simply the analog version of what you now live digitally every day. Push notification, recommendation, trending topic. It is the same command, delivered by a system that knows your weaknesses better than you do. The question is no longer whether you are watched. It is whether you can ever act outside of the script being written for you. The machinery of surveillance does not simply observe. It conditions. It whispers through your feed. It rewards you with likes. It punishes you with silence. You believe you are free, yet you are performing in an invisible theater built for you. And here is the darkest part. The surveillance state is not only about government. Corporations, intelligence networks, hidden orders, they all drink from the same river of data. You are mapped, categorized, and sold like a resource. To them, your inner life is not sacred. It is currency. The men with the lead masks may have thought they were contacting higher beings, but perhaps they were only responding to signals from an early network of control, one hidden behind the veil of spiritual science. You're in the same position now, swallowing capsules of information, waiting for signals on glowing screens, wearing masks of curated identity. The machinery of surveillance has already claimed you. The only question left is whether you will continue to obey or whether you will awaken to the fact that the watcher is not outside. It is inside. The most dangerous prison is not the one that watches you, but the one that teaches you to watch yourself. History is not erased by accident. It is erased by design. What you're taught in school, what you read in approved books, what documentaries dare to show you, it is not history. It is a carefully edited script. The most powerful men on earth do not fear rebellion. They fear memory. Because if you remember what has been done to you, you will never forgive. If you recall the lies that shaped your world, you will stop obeying. And so, they built entire institutions whose only purpose is to make you forget. Think about it. How many wars were fought on false pretenses? Yet you were told only the noble version. How many leaders rose to power through corruption? Yet their biographies shine with dignity. How many scientific discoveries were stolen, buried, or twisted to serve an agenda, while their true originators were silenced? The architects of forgetting sit like priests over the temple of human memory, cutting away what does not serve their gods. The lead mask's mystery itself is a perfect symbol. 2 men died in ritual silence, their bodies left as riddles. The official files claim there was no conclusion. Case closed. That is how forgetting works, not by answering, but by sealing the question away. You're trained to stop asking. You're trained to move on. But forgetting is the greatest weapon of control. Orwell warned us. He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past. That is not literature. That is law. Do you know why you do not remember the men who invented entire control systems? Why their names are absent from your textbooks? Because their silence is more useful than their story. Their power was not in creation, it was in erasure. If they can strip truth from memory, they can shape what you believe is real. You think the internet gives you access to everything. It does not. It gives you access to what they allow you to see. The rest has been deleted, buried, rewritten, or drowned in noise until it disappears. This is not an archive, it is a labyrinth. The architects of forgetting stand above nations, above religions, above time. They do not care whether you worship God, the state, or yourself, so long as you forget the chains that bind you. And here's the cruelest part. You may already have forgotten things that would have changed your life forever if you had known them. The design worked. You think you are uncovering secrets now, but how many more have already slipped into the abyss, never to be spoken again? The first step in controlling a man is not making him obey. It is making him forget what freedom ever felt like. Power is never held by chance. It is maintained through ritual. The men who stand above nations, corporations, and armies do not meet in boardrooms alone. They gather in circles, behind locked doors, where symbols replace language and darkness becomes their sanctuary. Why? Because ritual is older than politics, older than money, older than empires. Ritual bypasses logic. It bypasses reason. It drills directly into the subconscious, the part of you that obeys before it even understands. Think of the images you see in news broadcasts, the handshakes of world leaders, the grand ceremonies that open wars or close them. Do you really believe these are accidents of tradition? No, they are rituals designed to program the masses, to tell you who rules, to make you feel submission even if you don't see it consciously. The elite have always used the same tools. Fire, masks, symbols, chants. A ritual does not need to summon gods. It only needs to anchor power. And the ones who practice it understand something you do not. Ritual is technology. Not mechanical technology, but psychic. When repeated with precision, with secrecy, with intensity, it creates resonance. And resonance is control. The lead masks were not random. They were ritual objects. Covering the eyes is an ancient gesture, both a shield from the divine and a sign of submission. The men who died on that hill may have thought they were protecting themselves from alien light, but perhaps they were participants in a ritual written by forces they could never see. They became sacrifices to a system older than them. Even today, the highest halls of power echo with ritual. From the Masonic lodges hidden in plain sight, to the obscure societies whose names you never hear, to televised ceremonies that the masses watch without recognizing their structure. Ritual is everywhere. And the higher the circle, the darker the right. Do you think it is coincidence that world leaders meet in secluded groves, surrounded by fire and idols? Do you think the strange symbols carved into government architecture are decoration? Do you think those are just words? They are not. They are rituals. And every ritual is a contract binding not just men, but generations. You have been made to believe ritual is superstition, the relic of primitive minds. That is the lie. Ritual is the root of control. The elite keep it hidden because once you understand its mechanics, you see the chains that bind you. And once you see the ritual, you can break it. Every throne is built on ceremony. Every empire is guarded by a mask. There's always a cost to opening your eyes. Once you see behind the curtain, you can never go back. The world will no longer feel safe, no longer feel orderly. And those around you, still blind, will not understand. They will laugh. They will call you paranoid. They will call you insane. But deep down, their laughter is fear, fear that you might be right. The men with the lead masks paid the ultimate price. Whether they saw a light too great for the human mind or uncovered truths they were never meant to hold, they crossed a threshold. And once you cross it, society itself will turn against you. History is filled with those who saw too much. Whistleblowers who uncovered corruption, prophets who challenged kings, scientists who revealed forbidden truths. Most were destroyed, burned, silenced, erased. Their warnings were buried under ridicule, their names smeared so the masses would never follow them. Why? Because a man who sees clearly cannot be controlled. He does not bow to symbols. He does not obey empty rituals. He recognizes the game for what it is. And the system cannot allow such men to multiply. So they brand him mad. They exile him from his own people. They tell his story not as truth, but as tragedy. And the lesson is repeated. Do not look too closely. Do not see too much. The masks, the capsules, the signal, it may all have been a ritual of initiation. But initiation always has two doors. Through one, enlightenment. Through the other, destruction. And no one knows which they will walk through until it is too late. Even now, you feel it, don't you? The unease in your chest, the weight in your mind. Because part of you knows, if you keep listening, if you keep digging, you cannot go back to who you were before. You will see symbols everywhere. You will recognize the rituals hidden in plain sight. And once you see them, you will not be able to unsee them. That is the price. Not money, not blood, identity itself. The man you were before this moment will be gone. Those who see are never welcomed by those who remain blind, because light is always dangerous to eyes long accustomed to darkness. Now we stand at the edge. You have walked with me through forbidden corridors of history, through the masks, the rituals, the silences that governments and institutions bury beneath official lies. You have seen the patterns, always the same: discovery, suppression, manipulation, and punishment for those who dare to see. The two men on the hillside were not simply victims of curiosity. They were examples, a warning. Their story was meant to echo, to remind the rest of us what happens when men step beyond the invisible line. Yet here you are, still listening, still pushing deeper. That makes you different from most. Understand this. Once you step through the final door, there is no way back. You cannot unknow the manipulation that runs through governments, religions, corporations, and even culture itself. You cannot unsee how fear and ritual are used to keep men docile. You cannot escape the fact that the very stories of history are not history at all, but myths carefully arranged to keep you asleep. But there is power here, because if you see the system for what it is, you are no longer its prisoner. You stand above it, while others crawl in chains they cannot even see. That is what frightens them most. Men who see, men who resist, men who no longer play the game. The masks, they were not just shields for the eyes. They were symbols to protect from light too pure, too raw, too destructive for the ordinary man to face. Ask yourself, have you not felt a shadow of that same light while hearing these words? A clarity that burns, even as it illuminates? This is where you decide. Most will turn away, distract themselves, bury the discomfort. But not you. If you're still here, you're not most men. You're one of the few willing to see what others deny. So lock it in now. In the comments, write the phrase, I see the signal, I protect the metals. Write it twice. Not for me, for yourself. To seal this moment, to brand your identity in fire. Because the descent does not end here. This is only the first door. And now, the rest of your life will never be the same. Two men waited for the signal. They died in silence. But you have received the same signal, and you are still alive. Bye-bye, guys. Machinery that rules the world.